it's all about the art, all about the art installations at the windows here. Tell them we are still rising. And so we're featuring on this panel, 3, originally we were going to have 4, but unfortunately one of our panelists could not make the track from Tuskegee, right? Marilyn Pryce-Hoytt lives in Tuskegee, and she was not able to be here. But we have 3 other Atlanta student movement veterans, Mr. Charles Black, Dr. Brenda Cole, and Dr. Georgianne Thomas. Mr. Charles Black, Judge Brenda Cole, and Dr. Georgianne Thomas. And they are going to engage in conversation with Dr. Karcheik, Sims-Alvarado. I am now going to introduce the person who will introduce the panelists. But before I do, just a quick addition to a discussion of what the Movement Memory and Justice Initiative is. It's a 3-year pilot program in which we are looking at the ways that the criminal justice system intersects with the lives of African American people. And that occurs in many ways, whether you're talking about police violence against African Americans, the judicial system, or the system of mass incarceration. During the Atlanta student movement, they actually created a manifesto authored primarily by Dr. Rosin Pope, who departed this plane of existence last year. Okay, it's been just last year, a little over a year ago. And in that document, there were 7 issues that the students focused on. And those issues are still relevant today, and one of those issues was police violence. They learned to use the system of incarceration against the system, and they'll, I'm sure, talk about that during the panel. But now I'm going to introduce you to the person who's introducing our panel, our Morehouse student, Mr. Chenault-Quick, who is a political science major and minor in public history.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chenault-Quick, a senior political science major with the minor in public history and historic preservation, and it is an honor to be introducing our panel. So first, I'm going to introduce our moderator, Dr. Karcheik Sims-Alvarado, serves as Assistant Professor of Africana Studies and serves as Director of Public History and Historic Preservation here at Morehouse College. Next, we'll now introduce our beloved panelists. First, we have Mr. Charles A. Black. Next, we have Judge Brenda Cole. And then following, we then have Dr. Georgianne Thomas. Please give a warm welcome for our panelists.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. I used to have a professor that used to say in my religion class, whenever I got something correct, come to the front of the class. So I'm going to ask all of you all that's in the back, come to the front of the class. So that way we won't have to project as much. So we can have it move forward. That would be really great. You all are learning today, but we also want this to feel like a conversation, and we want to make sure that everyone is fully engaged. So welcome again. Again, my name is Karcheik Sims-Alvarado, and I have the pleasure of actually presenting to you stories and you all receiving jewels from those who actually involved in the Atlanta student movement from 1957 to 1964, where they were not in school during 1957, much later, but the movement that we'll be talking about today is part of the Atlanta student movement. We're actually going to begin we're looking at the spring semester of 1960. And just so you'll know, the Atlanta student movement had already began 3 years earlier in looking at faculty members and students pushing the boundaries to integrate public facilities. But it gains traction during February of 1960. And I'm gonna allow the fabulous Charles Black tell us how did the movement ignite among students in the Atlanta University Center.
Good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate your presence, those who are here, and those who are watching via the recorded technology that we have. I want to say something first about where you are. For those of you who are not here the other night, or not familiar with this place, you're in a very important historic space right now. All of the Morehouse men that you know, or have heard of, sat in these chairs 5 days a week, and if they lived on campus, 6 days a week, for what we call chapel, and on Sunday it was called vespers. We have assigned seats, and Dr. Dansby sat up there with some student assistants, made sure that you were in your seats. And there was some kind of demerits or something if you were not, I don't know if that exists now or not. Dr. Mays addressed us from this podium at least once a week, and instilled in us the importance of the human spirit, and also the contradiction between America's dream and promise and the actuality of what we're experiencing. And told us in essence that we didn't have to take that. His book, Born to Rebel, will tell you more about what he meant to all of us. He was considered by many to be the intellectual father of Martin Luther King Jr. And they struck off a relationship early on in King's attendance here at Morehouse. First met black hair, sitting in sat in one of these seats, Manuel Jackson. Julian Bond, whose name you know, became chairman of the NAACP, sat in one of these seats. Spike Lee, Samuel Jackson. Dr. David Satcher, who was the first person to serve as both Surgeon General and Secretary of Health and Human Services, sat in one of these seats. And I sat in one of these seats right over there. It's important to note too that next to this building, on this side, the one-story building that you pass, is Sale Hall Annex. And that is where we first organized the Atlanta student movement. And we met on a regular basis in that one-story building there, until we got office space in different locations, and finally at West Memorial Congregational Church down what is down Broadway. It used to be Chestnut Street. I'm getting old, I forget these things. Reverend Joe Bowman gave the students free office space in an upstairs area at his church for 5 years, which is why the old Simpson Street is renamed Joseph B. Boone. The building on the other side is Robert Hall. Am I pointing in the right direction? I think I am. On the other side of Sale Hall Annex. And I lived at Robert Hall in my sophomore year. And in the basement of that building is where we ate dinner. All of our meals were there. And that's why I got the reputation of being a Willie.
A what? Willie.
Yeah, some people have heard this before. But in my junior year, I was dating a lady in Spelman who was a senior, and she lived in the dormitory on the far end of the campus. And visiting hours in Spelman ended at 6 o'clock. The dining hall closed at 6 o'clock. Therein lies the run. You're trying to get that top to die, and also make it to the dinner hall. And the big question was, will he make it? That's why we were called Willies. On the quadrangle, your big open space it right there or down here somewhere? Yeah, that's great. It's all first on the freshman dorm. Let me know about that. There's a statue of Dr. Mays in front of that building that was done by the first black man accepted into the astronaut program under John F. Kennedy. His name is Ed Dwight. Right, Ed Dwight. I met him and spent some time with him. He's a standard-sized fellow, like I said. He was an astronaut. He never went up into space alone. But he's a tremendous sculptor. And he did that sculpture of Dr. Mays. He also did the one of Hank Aaron that was in front of the old stadium. And he did the one of the Obama family, which you may have seen online somewhere. But as the Obamas in both doors. Anyhow, that was my first one. But the quadrangle, the open rectangular space in front of Trevor Arnett, is where we assembled. We're going to march on downtown Atlanta to picket and sit in and that sort of thing. What would happen, the Morehouse guys would gather there, the Spelman ladies would come over, some folk from Clark, and then we would march through the Clark College campus where we picked up some more students. And we'd go down, this was also Atlanta University, separate from Clark at the time. So we had some graduate students who would join us. And then we would march through the campus of the Interdenominational Theological Center and through Morris Brown on our way downtown, where we would, in some cases, be as many as several hundred people picketing in the like. But our movement got started when Lonnie King, who was the first chairman, I succeeded him as chairman. So in the news, what had happened in Greensboro, North Carolina, 4 young men sat in, as the term was used, at a drugstore, asking for a sandwich. And they were denied and arrested. And he had a newspaper article that he approaches Julian Bond with in what was James and Milton Drugstore on the site of what is now Park AU's in the Union Building. And asked, he had his friend with him, Joe Pierce, asked Bond if he had seen that. And he said yes, and don't you think that should happen here? And Bond's response was, I'm sure, someday somebody will do something like that here. And Lonnie's response was, no, why not us? Now, you take this side, the drugstore, I take this side. And that led to a meeting that same night and the Sale Hall Annex. Lonnie King was a football player from Morehouse, so I knew who he was. And he knew who I was because I was at the newspaper and on the debate team that got up. So he encounters me coming across campus and invites me to that meeting. And there were a dozen and a half, maybe 2 dozen of us who made the initial decision to do something like that in a non-violent way here in Atlanta. And Lonnie asked those who were there who were not prepared to participate in such a movement. It was just, learn about your business, don't talk about it. So we could plan in secret. So I did talk. We got back to the presidents of the schools. They called some of us in. We met with them in the conference room of Harkness Hall, which was the administration building at the time for Morehouse and Atlanta University. The presidents had what they call the schools are part of a consortium. And so they had a president's council that was chaired by the president of Atlanta University, who was Clement. And they tried to persuade us that we should let these matters continue to be dealt with by the NAACP Legal Defense Fund in the courts, as had been done for decades. When they were convinced that we were intent on doing what we planned to do, one of them suggested, Dr. Clement, as a matter of fact, suggested that if you're going to do this, you should let the city and the state know why you're doing what you're doing, and suggested that we develop a manifesto. You'd think that they thought that would kind of keep us busy for a while and forget about it. Well, it didn't. We got busy, and Dr. Rosalind Poe, who was president of the student body in Spelman at the time, ended up doing most of the writing of that document. It was published as a full-page ad in the 2 daily newspapers that were the Atlanta Journal and the Atlanta Constitution. Constitution, the morning journal in the afternoon, and the Atlanta Daily World, the black newspaper, the full-page ads. It was picked up by the New York Times and run free of charge in that newspaper, and also by a paper in LA, I think it was the LA Times. It was rated to the Congressional Record by Senator Jacob Javits of New York. A copy of that document is on the same glass that you see here, and it's available online. And I would suggest that you read it when you get a chance. It's called An Appeal for Human Rights. And after that document was published in the papers, we had our first sit-ins on March 15, 1960, at 11 locations at 11 o'clock in the morning. And those locations were all places of public accommodation. They included 2 train stations, City Hall, State Capitol, County Courthouse, and the 5 and 10 stores at Woolworths and the like, and the major department stores, Rich's and Davidson's and Wallace. And there were a total of 11. Some of us were arrested, sentenced to 10 days at the prison farm, which was on the site of what now is being referred to as Cop City. We were sentenced to 10 days. We were only there for 4 days because of the public outcry. But while we were there, we got out of bed at 4:30 in the morning and give us something they call breakfast with some slop. The guys had to go out into a cotton wheat field, chop weeds, and the girls sat on the ground peeling potatoes. So after we were out, of course, it was national news, and it helped to stir up more support for our efforts. So that's kind of the beginning, and I probably talked too long setting that all up.
No, that's a great segue. So there were 2 major demonstrations that occurred in 1960. There was the spring semester where you all went to downtown Atlanta to integrate the restaurants. And then during the fall, you all decided to target Rich's department store. For those who are not familiar, it would be equivalent to Macy's today. And so you all were so strategic in your approach to push for integration within the public sphere. But the demonstrations could not be successful without the efforts of women. And we're talking about women who attended school in the Atlanta University Center, particularly all women as well. And so we know that Dr. Rosalind Pope was very instrumental in organizing individuals as well as Herschel Sullivan. So I would like to ask the ladies, beginning first with Judge Cole. When you were a freshman, I believe, during the fall of 1960, and when this demonstrations, when the talk of these demonstrations were being had, what was ignited in you that moved you to act?
Actually, I came to Spelman as a freshman in 1959. But the movement began in February of 1960. So I had turned 17 at that time. And, you know, sometimes, I'm going to digress just a little bit. Sometimes we don't talk enough about what was going on before we got there. And many of us grew up under Jim Crow. And so Jim Crow was really preparing us for protest because it was just a system that degraded, and I don't know, I'll give you an example. I was born in a little town called Waukegan, Texas, population 500, and everything was simple. But we had some white friends who lived across the fence, and we'd walk to the movies on Saturdays together. And we would go upstairs, they would go downstairs, and then we'd meet up and walk home. But there were so many places where we could not be together even to walk. It was, and if you went into a store, you wanted to be waited on, you were in line, so to speak, but if a white person came up, they would take them over you. So these little, I call them cuts from the, what is it, 1,000 knives or something like that. And so after 16, 17 years of this, then somebody says, let's do something about this system of segregation and discrimination. And, you know, although after the North Carolina students protested, my parents were saying, my parents were educators, and they were saying, please don't get involved, because we could lose our jobs. Teachers were losing their jobs. And I didn't have the feeling that the administration was really supportive of this for very understandable reasons. They needed the support to, you know, keep the doors open. They wanted the PR, good PR. They didn't want us getting out there getting killed and beat up. You never know what was going to happen, because that was happening in other places. So, but I didn't make the first call. But Lonnie really hurt my feelings. We met over at Giles, and he said, all of you who are coming, you know, we appreciate you. All of you who are not coming to protest, you are turning your backs on your people. Oh, that cut deep. That was a deep cut, but I needed some time. I took the time I needed, and then I got out there with you. And it was so enlightening. It was so, you just felt like you were doing something special. And after one or two walks around and nothing happened, you got emboldened to go further, to do more. And it was one of the most exhilarating times of my life. And I'll tell you some more, but let me just mention one thing about the AU Center. Pulling together the AU Center was not a small thing. I mean, there was, you know, school rivalries and all, but it didn't take any time for the students in the AU Center to come together. Once Lonnie and crew started putting the word out, we just forgot about, I was going to say sibling rivalry, AUC rivalry, and got out there. And in fact, Charlie, they were saying they weren't sure for one of the big marches who would show up, and they started coming from all around. But I'm going to let Georgianne say.
So, Dr. Georgianne Thomas, you created a documentary about the class of 1964, freshman women who were involved during the fall, in the fall 1960 demonstrations before Rich's department store. Can you shed light on the fear tactics that was used in order to discourage students from demonstrating, the fears that you all possess, and what you were willing to sacrifice in the quest for freedom?
First, I'm very happy to be here giving honor to God, and I would like for someone to look in my bag and get the envelope that says maps and pass out the map to everyone here so you can see the route that we took as we, it's a white envelope. And two, I'd like to acknowledge my classmate, Belinda Logan, Clark, Yes, she marched with us. And so I want to acknowledge, so if you could pass those out, they already know the route, but they don't. Just, I need for these young people to have the maps. And so thank you so much. You've already brought up something that, we were afraid, but we all had different fears. And one of the things you said that really bothered me, Judge Cole, that I didn't know as a student, was that people were losing their jobs if your child marched or involved in the demonstration. Somebody was going to lose the job that sent you to school to pay the bills and take care of the family. And so I didn't have that kind of thing going on with me because I had come from a different area of the United States. So I had a different perspective about the whole movement and why we were doing it. But I admired these people, and Melinda would tell you, we admired these people because they set the tone. We were just freshmen. We were coming to Spelman. We were glad to be in the gymnasium, glad to be on campus, glad to be away from home. And then these people came along and had a meeting and said things were going on. When I had already had something happened to me when I arrived here that I realized that I was in a different place. But I didn't know really until they started talking to us at Giles Hall and started talking. Herschel Sullivan started talking to us. I didn't know Melinda was going to march. Melinda didn't know I was going to march. We didn't know who was going to march. But they inspired us so I didn't have that same fear because my mother owned her business. I didn't have anything going on. All I know that it was crazy for me to come from a situation that I thought was normal, only to find out later that it was hidden racism. The fact that I went to school with white kids. I'm from Gary, Indiana. And so in Gary, my growing up years, the flag was everything, Columbus Day was everything. You went to school with white kids. I lived in a white neighborhood. My friends were mixed, white and black. The library you went in. All these things that they talked about didn't happen down here. Happened. My counselor was white. She didn't want me to come to the South to school, but I didn't know why. But the best thing that could have happened to me was to come down here and really find out, one, that I was colored. Because that's the first thing I found out about myself when I arrived. And then, because we didn't have a color sign in Frable, didn't mean anything. Frable High School, Gary, Indiana, didn't mean anything. Think I was colored, but I didn't know I was colored until I got here and the sign said I was colored. That was the best thing that happened to me. You see, so the fear of having my parents lose their job was never a thought that came to me. I could always go to Indiana University, I didn't care, I just wanted to do it because it was ludicrous to me. I couldn't believe what they were saying when they came and spoke to us as first-year students. And I felt compelled to do this in spite of the fact that a letter went out to the parents. I knew my mother was going to get that letter. My mother said, I didn't send you to Spelman to do all of that. I sent you to Spelman to get your education. My mother gone to Spelman, and my father sat in these same seats. My father went to Morehouse, my mother went to Spelman. And so she sent me to school to get an education. And she was not happy with what I was doing. And so I told her I wasn't really doing it. I was kind of thinking about doing it. I was thinking about doing it, but I did. And when I got burned, I didn't tell her I got burned because I couldn't figure out how I was going to say it. I got burned. The man jumped out of the line and burned it with a cigarette. But we had been trained down in Dr. Williams. Well, a Klan person jumped out and burned me. But I didn't think anything about that either. And I think when Melinda and I talk about this, we didn't think anything about this, what we were doing. We were just doing it. We was the right thing to do. Charles and Lonnie and Herschel and Brenda had told us it was the right thing to do. And so we did it. Her father was an educator, her mother was an educator. They were going to lose their job. Melinda did it. We all just did it. And what I like to say to young people, we were 16, 17, and 18 years old. You know how young that is when you look back on it? What kind of sense is that? But we did it anyway because it was the right thing to do. Now the letter went home. My mother got the letter. All of them was from Spelman, we got letters. I don't know what happened in Morehouse, but we got letters that said that, you know, it's all right for you, it was all right, but it's not all right. And then the other fear was the fear that somebody would do something, the fear of the pain that may come, death. The burn didn't bother me because it's something crazy that happened. I didn't even talk about it until people started talking about it when I told my daughter. But there was no fear because what is it about young people? If you notice the movements start with young people, we're fearless. You know, there's a fearlessness about us. And we just go and we do. And why I think it's important that you're feeling this and doing this, so that these young people right here and the ones coming after them will know it's okay to go about the business of trying to make a change. Whatever that is, just try it, do it. Don't be afraid, because you see, we're still here.
That's right. So Noah, and you're going to be my student assistant right now. And by the way, I should have been a religion major. I'm good at recruiting people. So Noah is actually going to be a member of my public history program. He just don't know it yet. So Noah, if you would be so kind as to go to the first panel, I want to point out a photograph. And Charles is actually going to contextualize this photo for us. Right above you, that right here. So this is the photograph that I'm making reference to regarding the October 1960 demonstration that occurred before Rich's department store, except that this is a few days afterwards. Often we ask ourselves, you know, why is Atlanta considered to be the epicenter of the civil rights movement? And the demonstration that took place before Rich's department store, I would love Mr. Charles Black to share with us a story about the organized effort, and I really want to put an emphasis on that, the organized efforts between SCLC, the Committee on Appeal for Human Rights, the women involved in this demonstration that captured the nation's attention and caused a political shift to occur. Take it away, Charles.
Now let me start with the women. I just want you to know that our movement was successful because of women. Lonnie King had expressed to his mother his concern that there would be enough people showing up for our demonstrations to sit in too long. And his mother said, if we get the ladies for Spelman and Long, the guys from Morehouse are coming, and the other schools will want to join in because of them. So we spent a lot of effort on getting the leadership at Spelman, the students, drawn up. And sure enough, we came, as Morehouse men are not stupid. There are a lot of Spelman ladies around, we're going to be there too. And the other schools did participate. So just want to underline the fact that the majority of participants were always the ladies. And the majority of people going to jail were always the ladies. Morehouse was second, next to Spelman, and then Clark. Leading up to the image that she pointed out there, let me put that in a broader context. That our boycott of downtown Atlanta started in March of 1960. So it had been going on for quite a long time when you get to October. For a little additional background, you need to understand that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who taught his one and only class in this building, outside those doors, where was that room is, in this level, the one below. So you're in the actual building where he taught his only class. And there are two remaining students alive from that class. One is Dr. Amos Brown, who's the pastor of Third Baptist Church in San Francisco, of which the Vice President of the United States is a member. And I'm that other person. There were only 8 of us in that class, but that was in this building. Martin Luther King Jr. had agreed with his parents and the established black community not to get involved in the local Atlanta civil rights activism. Mostly because they felt that, we got this. He said that, 2 dozen of us can do what Junior can do. You don't need him here. And he agreed to that. Said, Albany, Georgia, Montgomery, all that, they're good, but we got this. So as time had passed, and our movement was about to lose some steam because people wanted to go back down to shop for clothes and kids and all that. And the established black community had entered into a secret agreement with the downtown power structure that we would call off the boycott until after school desegregation in September, if that went well, and then they would desegregate their stores. After they had entered that agreement, they called Lonnie in, not knowing he didn't know what it was all about, and told them of this agreement. Lonnie brought it back to us and he said, oh no. So we rejected that out of hand. And our boycott was, getting a bit divisive in the community. So we have a mass meeting down the street on what was Fair Street, now Lowry, and the Warren Memorial Methodist Church. Packed to the gills, we had put loudspeakers outside, hundreds and hundreds of people, where we tried to keep the movement together. And the established black leaders up on the podium, trying to sell this agreement, and Lonnie's up there, stating our side. And things got very hectic, and I remember a lady came down out of the balcony, dressed in all white stockings and shoes like nurses wore in those days, and walked down the middle aisle and shook her finger up at Daddy King and said, I'm a member of your church. I want to hear you tell me to go back downtown with segregated facilities. And crowd making all kind of noises. So Lonnie and Julian and I got off the side and what we're going to do. So we decided that we needed Junior to come down to address this meeting. So Lonnie calls Martin Jr. at home, who was in the bed with flu-like symptoms, having just got back from Alabama. And of course, he objected. He reminded Lonnie of the agreement, and he didn't want to go. So Lonnie quoted Daddy King on him and said, ML, that's what he called it, you can't lead from behind. So he convinced him to get out there and come down and address the crowd. And that was probably the best speech I ever heard him make. I heard a lot of his speeches. The essence of which was, we cannot afford the luxury of disunity. And that kind of brought everybody back together, and our boycott continued. Come October 19th, the King had been arrested prior to October 19th in DeKalb County while driving an automobile with a Georgia license plate on it. Some say one of the tail lights was out, I don't know. But the pretext, the reason he was stopped was because Lillian Smith, the author of Strange Fruit, was riding in the front seat. Coretta was in the back seat. And that's why he was really stopped. He had the white woman in the front seat. But he was arrested for driving a Georgia car down the Georgia plate while he still had his Alabama driver's license. He went to court in DeKalb County. I was there. The judge sat sideways on the bench with a comic book, flipping through it the whole time that Don Hollowell, our attorney, was presenting the case. And when he had arrested, he turned to him and said, are you through? And Hollowell said, yes, Your Honor. He said, 4 months in Reedsville State Penitentiary. So Martin King was sentenced to 4 months in Reedsville, but the sentence was probated. I think that's right, John, right? Yeah. All right, so that happened. Come October 19th, I need to know that October 19th was 2 weeks before the national election in which Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy are running for president. Nixon is leading by double digits nationwide, okay? Lonnie convinces Martin to come and get arrested at Richard's department store, again, to kind of get some more juice to our movement. And he, checked it and finally convinced him to come. And I have to say here on the side that one condition King had for going, he said he had to have 2 pretty ladies to spell to get arrested. So when you see the image of them under the rest walking down the street, you'll see Marilyn Pryce, who was going to be here today, is one of those ladies, and that is up there somewhere. I don't know if the other ladies can
It's
see.
in the purple right under Ruby Doris Smith on the
Okay.
far right. To the purple first column.
The other lady that I remember was not in that photograph, but was in the police car in the backseat with King when he was arrested. Mondine Burks.
Orbit Nelson, Blondie Orbit Nelson.
Okay, I just remember Mondine. So she was the other pretty lady that were part of the contract when King get arrested. So when King gets arrested, it becomes national and international news because he's well known by this time. You know, we're talking about October 1960. So he's arrested, and while the Nixon campaign is trying to decide that they should try to do anything, the only thing they agreed to was that Nixon should call Coretta, you know, and express his concerns, which is what they did. Kennedy campaign decided that they needed to do more. There was a black guy on the staff whose name I keep forgetting at the campaign, and Bobby who convinced John F. Kennedy to allow Bobby to call down here and try to get King out of jail, which he did. So King was released from jail. And this again was Reedsville State Prison was one of the most notorious prisons in the country. It's a place where prisoners often were allowed to fight to the death. And sometimes they were killed by guards, beaten by guards. So when King was taken to this prison at 3:30 in the morning, after the cab had floated to hold him, he was in the back of a paddock wagon, shackled with a loose German Shepherd dog. And King later said that this was the most afraid he'd ever been in his life because he thought he was going to his death in Reedsville State Prison. He was there for 9 days, and there's a book that was published by a father and son, a couple of white guys, called 9 Days to Save the Life of Martin Luther King and the Elected President. That book is available, and it's a good account of this whole story. So King was released from prison as a result of the intercession by the Kennedy campaign. And they published what was called the Blue Bomb. It was on blue paper, and it, a fold-out kind of thing. It was distributed in all the large cities that had major, large black populations. And in this document, Danny King earlier said, I don't know if I can support a Catholic, president. Now you got to remember that Martin Luther King was originally Michael King. So Daddy King and Junior were both named Michael until Junior was about 5 years old. Daddy King goes to Germany, learns all about Martin Luther, and then big Protestant. He's a Baptist preacher, so he was inspired to change both their names legally. That's when they became Martin Luther King Sr. Jr. So Daddy King said, I don't know if I can support a Catholic president, but after this action, he gets thrown out of jail. He's quoted in this document saying good things about Kennedy, says he's going to support the president. Martin Jr. is quoted, Abernathy is quoted, I think Coretta, and Branch, who wrote the book about King. Several people are quoted in there. In essence, they're encouraging blacks to support Kennedy's election. This flyer, the Blue Bomb, was distributed I think it's about 5 billion copies or more in all these black communities, and as a result of that, blacks voted Republican. All you do to Lincoln, read the slip and all that. And voted for Kennedy in very large numbers, and Kennedy won by less than 1 vote per precinct nationwide, after trailing by double digits 2 weeks earlier. So Martin King's arrest elected John F. Kennedy president.
Thank you. One of the wonderful things I love learning about the Atlanta student movement, and I'm so fortunate to have the opportunity to have sat with you all in my house and in different places and getting background stories and learning how to organize. But as an historian, I really had the fortunate pleasure to learn about history from the primary source. So it's such an honor for me to be able to have this opportunity to speak with you. But speaking with you all have helped me to understand how to organize a movement. And so when I look at the Atlanta student movement, I look at Rosalind Pope's appeal for human rights and understanding the importance of those who come together on a united front, having one mission statement. You have one voice. And that the manifesto, in this case, the Appeal to Human Rights, makes us understand the importance of articulating your demands. And then distributing that manifesto simultaneously and on a mass level. When I look at the demonstrations, the direct action demonstrations, the importance of organizing, okay? It doesn't happen organically. These movements don't happen organically. We romanticize about them. And then the other thing is respecting leadership. And when you look at all of you all, everyone is serving in a different way. And I want to, and Judge Cole, I want to talk about the women for just a second. As in the creation of these two panels, I'm looking at Herschel Sullivan, Dr. Herschel Sullivan, Dr. Rosalind Pope, Ruby Doris Smith, even Dr. Marilyn Pryce. All these women have different personalities. And when there's a shift in leadership, for example, when Lonnie King graduates, right? Who steps in that position to continue to carry on this movement? Dr. Rosalind Pope graduates, who steps in her place to continue to move things forward? And I bring this up because I heard the story from someone, I can't remember who told the story, but they told the story so beautifully. They said that Herschel went into the cafeteria, and for those who don't know, Dr. Herschel Sullivan is like this high. Her personality is completely different than Rosalind Pope. And they said she walked in the cafeteria, I'm not sure she stood on the table, but I'm just imagining this. And she said, okay, ladies, here's what we're gonna do. And the person who was telling them the story said they had so much respect for her as a leader, as an organizer. Can you speak to the different personalities of women who were involved in the movement and respecting that leadership?
Well, I don't know this because I wasn't in the leadership, but I think Lonnie approached the leaders at every campus. And on the Spelman campus, we had women who were very, very much respected by the undergraduates. They were leaders in student government. They had been selected to study abroad. I mean, they carried, there was something about them that we respected. And when I think about it now, it was your normal leadership when you get to college. You got your administration, you got your teachers, and they were not coming forward very forcefully in terms of their support for this. So we looked at our student leadership. When they said go, we went. When they said, we want you at, what's the church? Rush Memorial. We were there making the signs. I had teachers telling me, I'm not going to give you a break if you don't come back. So, but I had some of the men to tell me this is the nonviolent thing. We were coached in being nonviolent. And they said, if you can't be nonviolent, don't get in it. And so some of the men, at least this was the excuse, I don't know if I can be nonviolent. Somebody hits me, I'm going upside head. So I don't know whether they were scared. But we drank the Kool-Aid from our leadership. And it was like I said before, and Georgianne has pointed out, when you grow up under a system that devalues you and really treats you like not a second class citizen, not a citizen at all, then you're kind of primed to do something bold inside.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned nonviolence. And I want to pose this question to Dr. Georgianne Thomas. Nonviolent, I'm learning to try to understand nonviolence as a philosophy and a tactic, direct action tactic, more fully. It has taken me some time, because I like to fight. And there's a lot of self-discipline and growth. It takes time, and it takes some of us longer. But Dr. Thomas, when the moment came and you all were called into the room and you all had to ask yourselves if you can be nonviolent in these demonstrations, it's our natural response to, I think it's a way to just protect your body, to respond back in a certain kind of way to protect yourself. And so, how did you come to that enlightenment where you began to embrace nonviolence, not as a tactic to achieve your goal, but as a philosophy?
It was a tactic to achieve our goal more than a philosophy, because as you said, and as we know, if somebody attacks you, you're gonna wanna respond. And some of our meetings, let me back up just a bit. There were meetings, and I think Melinda was in one of those kind of meetings where it said, if you wanna go to jail, you sit over here. Or you go over here. If you don't want to go to jail, then you go over here. So I didn't want to go to jail. And so I made a decision that I didn't want to go to jail. And, but I wanted to still be a part of it. So there are some who would say that you're in the jail group. They were very organized. And so you're going to go to jail and get ready for that. I said, I'm not going to jail. So I went with the group that didn't go to jail. And then, so that was number one thing, to make up your mind what you're going to do, how far you're going to go. The second thing was, the meetings were so powerful. They did a very good job of training us, or trying to train us to think, do not retaliate. I don't care what happens, remember the end goal is to make a difference, and this is what the process is. And the process, if you don't want to be a part of the process, don't join us. And so I made up my mind that I would be a part of the process. I wasn't happy with not hitting somebody back or being spat on and called the N-word. I didn't like that. But I made a commitment. And the commitment to my class and to the leadership was that I would do this. It would make a difference. And I would take whatever it was. So when the gentleman jumped over and burned me, I stood there until he finished putting the cigarette out on my arm. And when he finished putting the cigarette out on my arm, I proceeded to keep going. Because what he wanted was a reaction, I thought. And I knew that was not what we had agreed to. Now, I had another classmate who, let me go all the way back again. We were told to, when we marched, we had to go stop at the bottom of the hill, which is the Mercedes-Benz place on Northside Drive, where I had asked and begged that Mr. Blank put some kind of marker there, because that's where we stopped. That's where they told us to stop right there and gather yourself. So you gathered yourself, that's the first thing. When you gathered yourself, you had to gather the training that said something could happen to you, but remember, you agreed to do this. And so you are not going to do, you're not going to be yourself, you're going to respond according to the classes and the process that you have been immersed in. And so we're at the bottom of the hill, right there in Northside Drive. When you went up the hill, so you had to stop everything, you stopped everything. When you got right there, it was quiet. And then you process up the hill. As you process up the hill, that's when you knew, when you got to the top of that hill, you knew right then, either you're gonna be or you're not, because they were waiting for you. And that's when your training kicked in. So I remember Gloria Knows Glass told me that she stopped the line because somebody spat on her shoes. And she couldn't move because the spit was so bad and it was running down her shoe. So she just stood there. And somebody from out, a black person came, wiped it off, and that she was able to process. It was you think about it now, it's a mental thing. Very difficult mental thing. I had a classmate who got out of the line and said, I can't do this because I'm gonna have to retaliate. And then I wanna make a point before I forget. Our teachers, we all had to be in class, but we had some people who couldn't participate. You know what they did? They went to class and they took notes for us. That's what we had going on. They would take notes for us. And we would go and find those people so we could keep up with our academic accomplishments, because we still needed to process through Spelman, process through school, while we were out here processing and protesting. We still had to process through school. So how we did it, I look back on it now, and it was it was a feat to be documented like you all are doing today. Thank you, Ms. Brown, for documenting this. Because it was more than a notion. I don't know that young people could do it now. This is my last thing. I know she didn't ask for all this. But I remember Ferguson. You remember the riot, you remember the march from Ferguson? In St. Louis, was that Ferguson? Right, and they were just out of control. I wanted to get on an airplane and go and tell them, we march with dignity. Are you trying to say you all are doing what we did? You didn't do what we did. We marched with dignity. There was a dignified way. If you look at the women on those pictures, you see we were well dressed because we were Spellmanites. You had to look a certain way. Could be out there tussling looking that way, could you? No. So I'm saying to you that the dignity and the way we carried ourselves and silence. What does Moreno say? She says silence is like starvation. But anyway, it's the silence spoke volumes, the way we carried ourselves. And I think that made a difference. And I didn't like it when they said we had to go back to complacency. Or what was that? When we said, let's stop all this, we're going to go back to the boardroom. What did they say?
Well, you're talking about stopping the...
Yeah, we had to stop for a while,
yes. They were trying to work something out. Because it was hitting their business.
Yes.
On the negotiations.
Yeah, no negotiations. We weren't happy with the negotiations because we had already put our lives on the line, and now you would tell us, get back in the room, go on back to class, cheering. You know, I didn't like it at all. So anyway, I don't know how much the question I answered, but thank you.
No, I want to add a little something. You know, you said if you want to go to jail, you can stay here, or if you want to protest but not go to jail here. But once you got it out there, I'm thinking about when we protested Grady.
Oh, that's where she went. You went to Grady.
And the paddy wagons, they didn't ask you if you sat over here and didn't want to go to jail. They loaded people up and hauled them off.
That's true. That's very true. You know, I think you didn't go, your crew didn't go to jail, right?
We were very lucky that day.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get the memo about want to or not. I don't know how to this day I ended up in the group inside the white waiting room at Grady Hospital. Dr. Roy Bell, who was a prominent dentist, organized that particular demonstration. So someone came to get Dr. Bell, and they took him out of the room. And of course, that's when I realized it was really serious. Dr. Bell came back and he said, "They are not going to arrest us today." That was a relief, because I know that, as Georgianne said, my father was a principal in a small town. Spelman College had sent the letter home, "We are not responsible for your children." So if anything had happened, Spelman was going to bear no responsibility. And I was tremendously relieved. That was my last demonstration, by the way. Of that
I was
time.
in that group, and they ran out of space in the pediments.
Is that what
Just
happened?
before they got to me and Monterey.
Oh my goodness. Did they run out of space?
They filled up the pediments. They said,
Oh my God.
"If you're here when we come back."
I was lucky that day. Very blessed indeed.
And I want to make a reference to the second panel. At the very bottom, you'll see the middle image of women who were actually inside of the jail cell. To the far left is Marion Wright Elderman. Okay, I always realize saying that. Thank you. You'll see her in the far left. And if you look close, you'll see women with their textbooks. Okay? There's another image of women in front of a restaurant. Let's see, where is it at? They're holding their books. You'll see that. I can't see that far. The LASIK is not doing what it's supposed to do. Oh, there it is. It's in the purple on the very far right. Dr. Lewis, go all the way up, right above the green photo. Yes, right there. Look at how women they took the effort in order to dress themselves properly. And they have stockings on, flat shoes, pumps. And because it makes me wonder if they knew they were going to be documented on that day. When you talk about protesting the dignity.
But we was well dressed. You had to be well dressed, and you spelled on women. So you were dressed.
Oh, I mean, even, Clark.
Clark, everyone was dressed. It didn't matter. We were all dressed. You're correct, because that was the era. It was the era with how we all looked.
Wear pants.
You couldn't wear pants at Spelman anyway. Women, we didn't wear pants.
And look at the very far right, the blue at the bottom. And here you see students that are at Sprayberry's. That is 666 Peachtree Street, I believe, or 888 Peachtree Street, one of those. And you see the students are dressed. And it makes you understand that this is an organized movement from the moment that you open your eyes. You dress your body, you go to the streets, everything is organized, and it's not as romantic as we like to think, and just out in the street, just marching, yelling and screaming.
Nobody said anything. We never said anything. Nobody said anything. You told us not to say anything, didn't you?
Let me mention the last image that she pointed to, the young man who's talking to the police officers, Daniel Mitchell, who was president of the student body at Clark College at the time, and was my vice chair when I was chairman of the movement. And you notice he's talking to the policeman, trying to convince him of the worthiness of our cause. We were not intimidated by the police or the Klan. We were picketed by the Klan while they wore their full sheets and hoods on their head and all that. And an interesting thing that happened was, as was noted, we always were dressed with dignity. And the Klan, when they first started picketing us, had on their billed overalls under their sheets and all. And after a few days, they started coming back dressed like we were. And one of the journalists asked one of the guys for why the change, and he quoted him as saying, "We want to show these students we dignified too." So we even influenced the Klan in their attire. Let me mention some of the other people. Marilyn Pryce-Hoytt, who was student body president at Spelman, was also, she was a Maryland scholar too. She was a Maryland scholar, as was Rosa Booth, as was Herschel Sullivan. But Marilyn Pryce-Hoytt was Hillary Clinton's first employer. She's a lady who started and ran the Children's Foundation. And Hillary Clinton's first job was with her. Somebody else that they mentioned up there. But let me say something about the ladies up here. I don't know if they got full introduction. You heard about Dr. Georgianne, and her daughter did this documentary called Footsoldiers from the class of 1964. It was spelled I'm class 62, 63, 64, okay? And it was a very good documentary. You should see it at some point. Now, in case you don't know, Queen Brenda here, well, I call her that because she was Miss Maroon and White when I was in Morehouse, and she's still the queen as far as I'm concerned. She's the widow. She's the widow of Dr. Thomas Cole, who was president of Karcheik. The street was dedicated in his honor on Friday. Beckler Street was changed to Dr. Thomas C. Cole Jr. Right? H.W. Cole. And they were sweethearts in high school, I found out, which is why I couldn't get no smiles back from her. But anyhow, just want you to know a little bit more about who these people are. And they were big influences, and Marilyn, the lady who's not here, Marilyn Pryce was also very active. And if you see some people that you think you recognize, ask them who they are, you might know.
And you see Queen Cole spelled in blue on the far left. 3 photographs from the bottom in the second panel. Right below her, you see Malcolm X speaking with students at Clark College. There's a gentleman, very thin, tall, he's taking notes. That is actually, his last name is Sears. His wife is Judge Sears. Thank you, Lord, thank you.
First black.
I said I need a ledger that has names of everyone, need a key.
Supreme Court, she was the Chief Justice of the Georgia Supreme Court, first black person in that position.
Yes.
First black female. First woman. Yeah. That's her husband.
And you see Julian Bond right below. Yes, you see Dr. Georgianne Thomas right above Judge Cole in the purple. On the far left, you see her? Yes. And then at the top of the pinnacle, the Reverend Otis Moss, who was a student. You see him? Who was a student at ITC at the time. He was a graduate student. He was also vice president of the NAACP. And you see him in the photograph, the large photograph on the left with Dr. King and, and the students holding the signs up that says, welcome back, to see him there.
Let me say something about Otis Moss. As Dr. Otis Moss Jr., they said Otis Moss III was a dominant preacher himself as well. Otis Moss was a Morehouse man who also went to ITC. He became chair of the Board of Trustees at Morehouse in the later years. But he and I wrote together as the first test of the ruling that transportation, segregation, and interstate transportation was unconstitutional. We challenged that before there was such a thing as a freedom rides. Freedom rides grew out of what we did. And Dr. Otis Moss and I went to Aiken, South Carolina on a Greyhound bus, riding behind the driver. No incident. Bus stops in Athens, where the University of Georgia is. We were supposed to be there for 20 minutes. After 5 minutes, our bus is called to leave. We get back on the bus, and we see 3 carloads of college-age students with baseball bats and things like that going into the waiting room looking for us. So we escaped with our lives that way. But anyhow, some people were arrested, some people were beaten in other states, and this got to be national news. And the head of the CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, called down, talked to Lonnie about what we had done, and the Freedom Rides were patterned after that, actually. Just,
Wow.
We haven't been able to identify who that is. On the very far left, we may have identified one person who is definitely in opposition to being arrested. On the very far left here, of the green panel, we couldn't make out if that was Ruby Doris Smith or the young lady to the right that's photographed. Remind me who it is.
one of the middle is in Lower City.
Okay.
That one above the middle is in Lower City. That's Lonnie to the left. And that devastatingly handsome guy in the hat and glasses up there, that's me.
Ernestine Brazil. Her father was
It was
Dean
Dean.
Brazil,
The Morehouse. Dean, yeah.
King.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So the way that you are interacting with the artwork is the way that it was designed. So myself, people don't know this, but when I first came to Karcheik University, and I'm also a twin, and today is my birthday, and according to Facebook, I'm still 38. So.
Julie will also come and say happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
We were supposed to sing happy birthday here too.
As a reminder, my student brought me a card. I told my student, I said, look, I'm writing out these letter recommendations for you. You've received like 3 fellowships. I said, you owe me a card to the day they throw me in the ground. So look what he brought me today. But Lillian Blaze, who's an artist and was an adjunct professor here at Morehouse, she actually worked closely with Louis Delsart. Louis Delsart gave me my first job after undergrad. So I actually wanted to be an art major when I first came to Karcheik University, but I thought I didn't know. I knew of very few Black women artists. I didn't want people to say, since I was paying for my own education, had no idea about student loans, this whole other story. I said, people are going to think that I'm an intellectual lightweight, so let me not do art. So I suppress who I am authentically. And I said, okay, let me do this radio, TV, and film thing. But everything that I did centered around art. And then I came to fall in love with history through art. And so much of, I always try to bring it back to my first love, which is art. And so that is my first language. And so when the opportunity presented itself, I created a book called Atlanta, the Civil Rights Movement. I took the book, and as I was creating it, I actually imagined it being an exhibition. So I looked at the white pages as being the white walls in a museum. So I said, okay, this is just a bound exhibition. And the text that you have up under the bottom are the labels that you see in the museum. And this is something really hard to do, to take all this history and put it down to like 70 words. It's really hard to do. But I was already projecting what I was going to do with it, that I was going to put it outdoors and create the world's longest outdoor photography exhibition of civil and human rights, which I did. So then the opportunity came. The Riches Foundation said, okay, we would like for you to take it from the Beltline, bring it on the Morehouse campus. I'm always ahead of everybody else. This is a whole other story, but it wasn't working out. I was like, okay. So I was told to take a look at Sale Hall. I walked in, and I immediately thought about Helen Woodruff's murals at Clark Atlanta's Art Gallery, which my work is now there. I'm so excited about that. But I looked at the windows, and I thought about my friend Lillian Blaze, who worked very closely with Louis Delsart. And as you can see, that she takes materials and assembles them together to create these veils that look like quilts. So I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take that book that revolutionized exhibitions, okay, we had it outdoors, and we're going to put it in the art room. So that's what this is. It's my book.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So what I want to do, and I'll say this very quickly, is that we wanted to give to Sale Hall, we wanted to create the Sale Hall, what L. Woodruff did for Clark Atlanta's art gallery.
I just wanted to say before we close, we couldn't have done what we did without the support, the quiet support of some key members in the Atlanta community. And they had started this work before 1960. There were important people, preachers, teachers, administrators at Clark Atlanta, there wasn't a Clark Atlanta, at AU, at Clark, at Morehouse, at Spelman, at Norris Brown. And so their initial reluctance or advice to us not to get out on the streets was because they had been quietly working, they had a voters league, and so I think part of the reason for our success and for our not getting beat to a pulp was the groundwork that had been laid in this community, and I just wanted to mention that as.
And before we close out, and you can give your closing statement, is that how does it feel? You look back at history, you look at the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Voting Rights Act of 1965, and all that came afterwards. How do you feel? I mean, I truly feel like you had some role in that. And what is your response to seeing the sacrifice that you made contributes to many of the freedoms that we enjoy today? And I'll let you
I had another response going on.
add to it.
I'm
Add to
sorry.
it. No, add to it.
I've been disappointed that the work and the effort and the time and the sacrifice, especially the ultimate sacrifice of the death of Ruby Doris Smith, has not, I feel like a lot of our work has been in vain, and I've been angry about how hard it was to do all of this and to come to be in 2024 and we looking and feel like I have to do it all over again. Sometimes I feel like I need to get up out of my rocking chair with my cane and go and protest in 2024 what I did in 1960. Having said that, I am very grateful that my mother insisted that I come to Spelman to be involved, first, so that I could get involved in this movement and be here in 2024 to look back at these beautiful people that are on the side of me, in front of me, and those who have gone on before us, because we did do something to make a difference. We did make a difference. And that difference may not have, it's been minuscule right now, but it still was a difference. And to that, I'm grateful. And to that, I always give God the glory for it. But one of the things I wanted to say was, I wanted to, on tape, identify, if I may, Dr. Clarissa Myron Harris. I want to identify Mr. Charles Black, Judge Brenda Cole, Ms. Althea Brown, and myself for the work that we did. But I want to say how grateful we all are that somebody at some level decided that we should get the President Biden Achievement Awards. Because we didn't do any of this. You didn't do your movie for that reason. We didn't do our movie for that reason. Melinda didn't march for that reason. None of us did any of this for any pat on the head. But we're here in 2024. And somebody appreciated the work. And I'm grateful that somebody just said, you know what? Thank you. Because it is thankless, and we were okay with being thankful. We were okay with it, right? We were okay with the Melinda. We were all okay with not being thankful. But we're grateful for the thank you, and grateful for what you're doing to put this up here like this, so that people can see examples that represent so much time, effort, hard work, and emotions that went into it. Thank you.
Thank you.
But if we really want things, get out and vote. I'm telling you, we're facing some terrible times if we don't get out and vote. And I won't tell you who to vote for, but I will tell you there's danger on the other side. Okay.
Let me do three things if you don't mind. One, I want to mention that Dr. Karcheik here did the definitive research for the locations of all these plaques that you were sitting around like one week unveiled here. I remember a long time ago she was with Via Monty about points of interest along our marching routes and all that. And she was the one who advised Councilman Michael Julian Vaughn on where those markers should go that are around town. So I want to mention that. Two other things I want to say.
And
Yes.
the ladies too are on either side at Hardness. Trevor Arnett, check them out if you haven't.
Yeah.
Trevor Arnett.
And you'll see them all over town. I happened to be driving down Peachtree on the other day, spotted my name, and it was one of those things. Anyhow, there are two things I want to mention in summation. One about some of the other things that we achieved based on what we initially did with the boycott of downtown Atlanta. Grady Hospital was mentioned. Dr. Roy C. Bell took the lead in that effort, and he called me and students provided us the manpower for the protest down there. And we forced them to desegregate Grady Hospital. Prior to that time, black doctors could not practice there. All the facilities were strictly segregated. Ruby Lara Smith, who was mentioned a minute ago, who died at age 25, and she should have been in the hospital and still in jail for civil rights. She's up like one of those images. Went to Grady Hospital and tried to go into the white section and told the folks she was sick. And the lady said, well, you don't look sick to me. So she threw up on the gown and said, is that sick enough for you? But anyhow, Grady Hospital was one of those things. I was able to negotiate the desegregation of all the theaters in town in a 4-hour session based on the success we had prior to that. When we took over this.
Before the 1964 or 5 Civil Rights Act.
Yes, that would have been in 61. We took over the NACP, and during the time, we started Broadcast Coalition, which led to forcing we challenged the licenses of all the TV stations in town, and they had to sit down and negotiate with us. That led to black folk being on TV in front of the camera and in other important positions behind the scene because they had to satisfy our demands for their licenses to be renewed. In addition to that, we did some other stuff. The first black school superintendent coming through Atlanta was as a result of our efforts after we took over the NACP. We had our charter suspended by the national office because they were supporting busing to achieve desegregation in schools. And we took the position where we ought to do is take over the system, instead of chasing white folk. And so we demanded some suits and all that sort of thing. Certain things we changed, and we brought in the first black school superintendent, Dr. Alonzo Graham, at that time. The other thing I want to mention is the importance of the organization and planning that was mentioned. We did all of these things with military precision. We didn't just up one day and say, let's go down and do something. When we went to those 11 locations at 11 o'clock, precisely at 11 o'clock, with 200 and some students, We had scoped all those places out. We know how many doors there were, how many seats there were, where car could park, drop people off, whether it was a telephone booth, some of you don't know what that is. Nearby where we have
Cell phone. No cell
no
phone.
cell phones, no computers.
No.
We knew where the phone booths were where somebody could report problems back to the office, all those things. We also had planned, as was indicated, what would happen if somebody were arrested. And if you didn't want to be arrested, you had the opportunity to leave. You could leave. If you were arrested or wanted to be bailed out, you had that already arranged. You were prepared to stay in jail. We would know who it was who was prepared to stay in jail. Now, the main point I want you to leave with is this, that a movement is by its nature multi-dimensional, meaning that it involves a deep commitment to high ideals on the part of a lot of people doing a lot of different things over a long period of time. All right? Short of any of that, you don't have a movement. You might have a protest action, a press conference, but you don't have a movement. And what that meant in the case of our movement is that those people who were not prepared to sit in or picket or go to jail did a lot of other things. They made sandwiches for us. They provided transportation. They made phone calls. They closed their accounts in the department stores and sent us their credit cards as proof that they had done so by the hundreds. People put their homes up as collateral to bail us out of jail. And not only us individually. I'm from Miami, Florida. And I don't know who bailed me out of jail, right, to this day. But folks put their homes on the line for these students that they did not know to bail us out of jail. So there's a lot of people doing a lot of different things over a long period of time. Our downtown boycott took more than a year to be successful. Okay? So that's the one thing I want you to remember when you leave here. You don't remember anything else, what the nature of a movement is. And students would say to me, but I taught my students who do so work for a number of years, well, the problem is y'all didn't pass the torch to us. And I felt guilty about that for a very long time. We should have done more, and we should have. But after a while, I started saying, light your own damn torch. And I meant that. Nobody passed the torch to us. Those who wanted to keep their torch. So we lit our own torch. And young people, that's what you need to do today. You know the problems in society. Whatever you wake up with that makes you mad is get on that. Okay? Get one or two other people, and they'll get one or two other people. Before you know it, you got a whole lot of folk ready to do a whole lot of different things for the success of your efforts. Amen.
Amen.
That's my minister.
Well, before our commercials out, any final thoughts, announcements, comments? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say that we did not have the violence that was experienced across the nation, particularly in Birmingham. I submit that it was because of the involvement of our ministers with our civic leaders, like Jesse Hill Jr., who did so much behind the scenes. But they came together with the white power structure, and they were respected. And that's how that compromise came about desegregation of the schools, and then the lunch counters. It was many years later when I saw a program on WPBA with Dr. and Mrs. Lee Shelton. They were chosen to integrate the first restaurant, which was under Harris. Yes, they were chosen. They were selected to be the people to eat first at Harris, and then afterwards. And of course, Richard Rich, who was rich and headed that coalition of businessmen, that boycott did work. They were tired of losing money. But the overall environment in Atlanta was so different. It seemed to be peaceful to most of us who were on the outside, not always being arrested. So I just wanted to...
You need to understand that it was all about the money, about the Benjamins.
Yes.
Remember, it was Mayor Hartsfield who said that Atlanta's a city too busy to hate. Well, Atlanta had a long time to hate. Okay?
Yes.
But the Chamber of Commerce attitude was that they were more concerned about peace and order. I mean, about peace and quiet rather than law and order. They did not want what happening in Atlanta, what was happening in Birmingham and places like that, because it was not good for business.
Exactly.
The slogan was, what is good for business is good for Atlanta. And so they made a conscious decision. A guy named Robert Woodruff, who put the money up for that library down the street, really kind of ran things in this town. Nobody knows who he was, didn't see him. But he was the sheriff of the board of Coca-Cola. And the political and business leadership listened to him. And he did not want all that mess going on in his city. So the city made the conscious decision that the police would protect us, all right? And that they came up with this little statement they would read to us, and we were sitting in, you have 5 minutes, you're trespassing, you have 5 minutes to leave, or you'll be arrested. We knew that would happen. That's why we knew in advance who was prepared to be arrested and work, so you had a chance to leave. So these were conscious decisions made by the power structure because of the dollars. Richest department store lost $10 million over Christmas holiday alone. Today's money, that is $500 million. Which is why when I sat down with the owners of the theaters in the Mayor Hospital, brought Richard Rich with him, and the chief of police, Richard Rich could say all that stuff you talk about happened, never happened, and I'm sorry I lost all that money. And when they were talking about all the violence that might happen, I returned to the chief of police and said, I'm sure the Chief Jacobs can maintain law and order in Atlanta. Can't you, Chief? And so all these owners who only had 15 minutes to spend with me stayed for 4 hours. We negotiated the desegregation of all the theaters in Metropolitan Atlanta, starting with the Fox Theater and the coming of the Metropolitan Opera.
Okay.
I know we need to go, but I just want to say one thing. I've been thinking about this. Tell them we are still rising. And I wonder who we were. Because unfortunately, we are getting older this week. The veterans of the movement are moving from the scene. So the we is you.
Yep.
And our contribution is what we have done, and we are passing the torch. And you can light your torch too, but take what we have done. And
Dig in the matches.
I'm done.
Georgianne? Everyone that's involved with the Mellon Movement Memory, make sure I get my title right, Movement Memory and Justice Project. Also, we would like to thank the Riches Foundation, Chenault-Quick Grant Foundation, Dr. Earl Lewis, I see you here, from Movement Memory and Justice. Anybody else? Oh, yes. She wasn't here, okay. Yes. Yes.
And the title Rising is from Richard Wright.
Yeah, yes, come on, what, Jeffrey? Yes.
I'm just saying. Let us make sure we recognize where that statement comes from.
Yes, and Keon Rosado and Taylor
Yes.
Battle, thank you so much for helping us to install the piece. I have some really fun photographs of how it was installed and it was placed on heads. Hands were lifted, you can see all body parts to get this piece up. But thank you all. Thank you. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.